It's just the way it
Sure,
kind of came
but
to me.
can I say one more thing about hell? Something that just occurred to me right now,
Hmm.
in terms of subjectivity and stuff. And then we can stop there. But
Hmm.
I've been sort of thinking what it means for hell to be eternal and for heaven to be eternal. And in the sense, I've been trying to really think through the idea that heaven and hell aren't symmetrical. Like hell isn't just the opposite of heaven, because less than nothing isn't just the opposite of something, because nothing is the opposite of something, right? In the same way that sin isn't the opposite of goodness, there isn't a symmetry there.
Hmm.
Sin is just a deprivation of goodness. And it's like I was trying to think about what does it mean for hell to be eternal. And I was thinking about and I'm like, well, what do the fathers say about time in this sense? And um in the Confessions, St. Augustine talks about the present moment. And he talks about how it has no length. Like, you know, how there's the future and then there's the past, and then the present is always self annihilating. Like, we can never
Hmm.
grasp the present. And for that reason, it has no length. And for the way I kind of understand this, the fact that all content that we have has to exist across time, like to think a thought, you're involving past, present, and future in this
Hmm.
flow of time. Um, so the way I like to think about this is that heaven is when past and future and present we all lead up to this final state where it's all enveloped and accounted for. But hell would be analogous to the present, where it is just as eternal, because the present moment, it's an eternity that is the opposite of a heavenly eternity, if you get what I mean.
Hmm.
It's like it has no length, but because like Wittgenstein has talked about how, like, um you have eternal life if you live in the present, right? If you live in the moment, you have eternal life, because from within the moment, it is quote unquote eternal. But I would say that the because it only becomes not eternal when you pass into the present and when you pass into the future. That's its negation. But I would say that hell is sort of a present moment that is um literally yourself, devoid of all substantial content, because I'm trying to work out, and this was a little confusing. I'm just trying to figure it out, that the present moment literally has the same structure as the void of the subject. Because you know how we talk about how the subject as the void has no content, right? It has no personality. It is just this void. But the present moment without the past and future, and this relates to this relates to stuff Byung-Chul Han's talked about in The Scent of Time, how it's only when the past and present, they commune, essentially present, past, and future commune, that we build this meaningful sense of time and don't just have individual points. But I would say that hell is this point of the present and of subjectivity, where it's eternal because you can't ever escape it, and you've turned away from the past and the present and eternity itself. You've turned away from eternity, and it's this turning away into yourself, into the present moment, that is hell, essentially. And like in
Hmm.
the same way that Satan, there's this idea that man was going to rule over the angels, but Satan didn't want that, so he held on to this present moment. He held on to his temporal state. And in the same way, present man in his fallen state, hell is essentially holding on to the fall,
Hmm.
refusing God's grace. And in this sense, it is analogous to the present moment. So I would say that the present moment there, I just wanted to draw a connection here between heaven, hell, eternity, the present moment, subjectivity, and the substantial human. That the substantial human is like hell, like I just wanted to, like, this idea of not being symmetrical. Like, I'll just go through all three and then conclude. Like, um eternity of heaven and eternity of hell, they're not the same experiences of eternity. One is an eternity of the present, and
Hmm.
one is an eternity of an infinity of God. Then there's the idea of uh fallen, there's man in hell, who is um uh, the subject in hell is empty, and it is still man, quote unquote, but it's lost everything that is human about it.
Hmm.
So versus us in heaven, where we are fully actualized, we're more than ourselves, or we are fully ourselves. And
Hmm.
then in hell, we are completely lost even to ourselves, and it's through this obsession with ourselves that we are lost. So That was a little longer than I expected it to be, but essentially, just I wanted to draw those connections there, and yeah.
Yeah, you know, I that was it's kind of uncanny. I was just reading this concept, this insight that you came up with. Dugan just wrote about it almost precisely like you just constructed it. So I'm going to try to find it really quick and read this section real quick because that was phenomenal. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. All right, so I wanted to bring up this section, and I don't know if this is exactly where I want to be, so I'm going to start reading a little bit to see if it kind of makes sense. So in the beginning here of this chapter 10 from the Fourth Political Theory, Alexander Dugan, it's entitled "The Ontology of the Future," and he brings in Heidegger a lot. He's a Heideggerian. He's written dozens of books on Heidegger, and he talks about Heidegger's three ontologies, three ecstasies of time, and then he talks about time in terms of music, and he brings in Husserl. And then here's where he starts talking about the past, the present, and the future. He says, the future should therefore be understood in this context. The future is continuous in the present, not the moment of novum, which means the new thing, but the process of the fading of the present into the past. The future is the tail end of the present, its resonance. We live the future just now and already now when we play the note of the melody of life. The future is the process of the death of the present, attention to the dissolution of melody into the totality of harmony. The new appears in the future only when the harmony is lost, when our attention falls asleep, and then suddenly we awaken and cannot identify the sounds that we hear. And he says later here, he talks about the short circuit. Let me see if I can get this here. He says Edmund Husserl says, it is the nature of discrete, discontinuous events, talking about the ecstasy of time. It is the suspended moment of being without history, and hence without a sense of awareness and consciousness. Edmund Husserl dug much deeper into phenomenology of time. He discovered the new instance of consciousness lying underneath the level where the nature of time as illuminated by music is perceived. According to Husserl, beneath this level, there is another ultimate one, which is responsible, and this made me think of the eternity here, which is responsible for our perception of what is now with the force of evidence and a much more intensive taste of reality that recalls the ever-dying past. This instance is consciousness itself, the consciousness as such that precedes the intentionality and the dualist nature of apprehension, being necessarily divided into two parts, the perceived and the perceiving. In the present, the consciousness perceives itself and nothing else. That is the ultimate experience of the last source of reality. According to Husserl, the foundation of all consciousness is transcendental subjectivity, from whence it conceives itself as a kind of short circuit. This experience is self-referential. In it, there is the perception of pure being as the presence of the subjectivity of consciousness. This short circuit causes all kinds of dualities to be born, the logical ones and the temporal ones. The necessity of stopping this trauma is manifest in the creation of time, the articulation of the three moments of time. Consciousness of time is necessary to hide the present, which is the traumatic experience of the self-referential nature of pure consciousness. So again, consciousness of time is necessary to hide the present, which is the traumatic experience of the self-referential nature of pure consciousness. Intentionality and logical judgments are all rooted in this evasion of the perception of the pain of the void, whereby consciousness becomes aware of itself. Such an attitude to the levels of consciousness explains the origin of time as the evasion of the present and the unbearable tension of the pure presence of the same. And he goes on and on